Hey everyone, I'm the Chess Nerd, and today we're going to be looking over one of Beth Harmon's game from the TV show Queen's Gambit, a fictional TV show about a girl named Beth Harmon growing up in the 1950s and 60s, and basically being a Bobby Fischer, conquering the chess world little by little. I am taking you today to the second episode, Exchanges, in which Beth Harmon disputes in the finale of the tournament, the state tournament of Kentucky, the final game. Here she plays against Harry Beltik, the best player of the tournament, and it's the final game, so intense rivalry. Now you may know that the title says Beth Harmon plays like Super Nezh. This is true. This is actually a game by Super Nezh that he played in 1955 in Riga, Latvia against Genrikh Kasparyan. So let's start off with the game. Beth Harmon is the white pieces against Harry Beltik here, and she starts off with e4. Harry Beltik replies with the Caro-Kann defense, to which Beth Harmon replies with knight c3, in which she plays the two knights attack. Bishop g4, h3. Harry Beltik exchanges his light-colored bishop. Because it's inferior, it's behind its pawn structure, and so this is a good exchange, a good strategical exchange for black here. Queen takes f3, e6, g3, g6. Actually, Mikhail Botvinnik, former world champion, played this against Vasily Smyslov in 1958 in the world championship with the black pieces and won. Bishop g7, castles, knight d7, queen e2, and basically the reason for the double move here is that Super Nezh, or Beth Harmon, is looking after the knight e5 threat. If Beth Harmon would have played rook d1 here, Harry Beltik would have played knight e5, and this gains a tempo on the queen, who has to move, queen e2. And now Harry Beltik has the initiative with d4, forcing the knight to go back to its initial position, and now d3. And after c takes d3, the white's pawn structure is terrible, this bishop is not out, this rook is doing nothing, and this knight is underdeveloped. And Harry Beltik just has a better game here, controlling this very important d4 square. And so Beth Harmon looks ahead after this knight d7 play and plays queen e2. d4, knight b1, and e5. d4 here is a positional mistake. It takes a lot of pressure off the center, and yes, the knight retreats to b1, but this is only temporary. This will hurt black in the long run more because white can still attack on the king side. This doesn't prohibit white from attacking on the king side. And so this move is just terrible because it closes up the center. The center is where you want to add pressure when the opponent is attacking you on a wing. So closing up the center is not wise here, strategically speaking. So d4, knight b1, e5, d3. And now we see Beth Harmon's pawn structure going diagonally here, and the f4 push f5 is a typical plan in these pawn structures. So knight e7, f4, queen c7, a4, and castles. Safer would have been to just long castles, because short castles, obviously there's the f5 push, and white can attack on the king side. Looking pretty terrifying. So f5 directly by Beth Harmon. f6, knight d2, bishop h6, a terrific move by black. Basically, Harry Beltik wants to exchange off his black squared bishop here with white's c1 bishop, because this bishop is just terrible under this pawn structure and is living in a cave. And so he does this move to exchange off white's bishop, which is better here behind its pawn structure and potentially lethal against such a position. So a good move by black, strategically speaking. King h2, king h8, takes, and after black takes back here, Beth Harmon in the movie rushes to the bathroom and says the following words. She says, in the mirror to herself, she says, "You ugly piece of trash, you can beat this fucker," which is very rude to herself, and says a lot about self-destruction as a chess player, if you want. She comes back from the bathroom and plays knight f3 here. Beltik obviously exchanged the bishops, as we talked about. Knight c5. This is a bad move. Black should have just avalanched the pawns on the queen side. King. We know the knight on d7 is not that good, and it's not active, but this is not the best way to attack. The threat on a4 here is not a priority for Beth Harmon. She decides to push c3 and disregard that threat because this center is about to crumble, and Harry does not have time to take the pawn on a4. So knight b3 instead. Rook d1, rook d8, knight h4, queen c8, bishop f3, queen e6, bishop g4 attacking the queen, and after queen f7 here, this is another mistake by black. This kills off a tempo for black because after what was played in the game, knight f3, this attacks the pawn on e5, and the black queen has to move yet again. Queen g8. So h4, king g7, rook f2, potentially doubling the rooks. Rook d6, this is another bad move from Beltik. The rooks here are not coordinated anymore, so they don't protect each other, so anything that threatens knight e5, such as, romantically, rook f1, threatens e5, and now the rook just has to go back, so a loss of tempo here. Black does not have any counterattack, and now this is all white's game. Queen c2, b6, h5, c5, takes, and now black takes on c3. And now c4 here by black. This is potentially black's best move of the game. This is potentially black's best move of the game. c4, dynamic move, opening up the center. Black's really only forcing move of the game, and the best means of a counterplay here, in a position where his king is failing and white is getting the win. So Beth Harmon thinks a long time here. It's a very hard move to make. And finally, d4. d4, sacrificing a pawn. What does she gain in exchange? She gains the e5 push, sacrificing a bishop, mind you, but not really, because after rook takes g4, simply e takes f6, and this is lethal. This is winning. So e5 threatening immediately e takes f6, and black can't take the pawn on e5 because of rook takes f8. This is what happens when the rook left the d4 square. Coordination stopped on f8, and a lack of protection is now there. So e5, f5 by black. They can't take, they can't do much. So yeah, f5 by black. Beth Harmon takes the free pawn. Queen d5, another counter move by black. Ideas with rook d2 if the rook were to leave. And just overall activity of the pieces is a good sign of black reaching for a counterattack here. But I'm afraid too little too late. Beth Harmon plays bishop e6. What a move, double exclamation points here. If queen takes, simply rook takes f8, and this wins. And if rook d2, simply bishop takes queen, rook takes queen, and rook takes rook. And this is a winning endgame for white. In the match, Beth Harmon shows her cocky side and says, "I'm afraid it's over," to Harry Beltik, who says, "Let me play." And he plays rook h8 pretty angrily. Check, Beth Harmon says in the movie, I think this is a mistake, obviously, because she says, I don't have to move my queen. No, you don't have to move your king. I can just protect with my bishop, which she does. She covers h3 with her bishop. And what happened? What changed here from the past two moves is that white did not gain any material, but they obtained the f file. Very important for an f7 rook here. And so Harry Beltik discouraged in the match. You can see all over his face. After knight takes g6, white finishes it off with rook f7 check. Beth says it's over, resign basically, and gives him no choice. But Harry, being stubborn, plays king h6 here. And this lets the opportunity for Beth Harmon / Super Nezh, it is Super Nezh's game, to play the brilliant, wait, can you see it? Pause the video if you want to see. She plays queen takes g6. Wow. And what is this? This is a queen sacrifice. The queen sacrifice has to work here unless you're winning an extra queen. Fortunately for Beth Harmon, it checkmates. So after king takes g6, white have a mate in 6 here, rook check, and whether the king goes here or here, both are winning. So let's say king g5, rook f5, king g6, rook 7 f6 check, king g7, rook g5 check, king h7, and this blocks the pin that the rook was doing, and successfully white just checkmate with bishop f5 checkmate. Very pretty sacrifice, and in Super Nezh's game, his opponent resigns after queen takes g6, and in Queen's Gambit, Beth Harmon's opponent Harry Beltik resigns after queen takes g6, politely so, seeing the mate in 6. And so Beth Harmon wins her first tournament, the Kentucky State Championship, and brings home $100 in 1955, which is approximately $1,000 nowadays, which is quite impressive. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and for more games and more analysis, if you like this, please feel free to subscribe, like, and share. I appreciate it.